As modern Americans, we've been spoon-fed this dumbed-down, cartoonish, simplified version of history, while dismissing our own capabilities and intellectual, independent, critical thinking and the accomplishments of our own ancestors.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
They've noticed that the version of history that we have been sold, it just doesn't add up. And that's why the Stu Peters Network, together with Sean Hibbler, is releasing a new film titled Old World Order. We're going to pull the mask off of our nation's real history.
You won't.
What if the reason that our cities were burned was to cover up the accomplishments of our ancestors?
Old World Order's kind of a 101 introduction to this PSYOP. Introduction to this PSYOP.
I think you accidentally told the truth.
They don't want people to know that we didn't build these buildings.
Flashback.
While dismissing our own capabilities and intellectual, independent, critical thinking and the accomplishments of our own ancestors.
We didn't build these buildings.
Are you delusional? Do you suffer from a mental illness?
I mean, let's start with giants.
Look at some of the doors that you've included in this film. I mean, why in God's green earth would we ever need doors that big, buildings that massive?
Are you stupid or something?
This is how they manipulated our history, through fake construction photos and through taking credit of, oh, we built these buildings. It's impossible. It's impossible.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
I'm trying to take you to these doors, show you the doors, and I pray that when the film's over, you walk through them all.
You know what, Barney? Give this guy a cigarette. He's freaking out. Who the hell is Barney? You don't see Oh, shit.
Don't take them lightly. These are huge rabbit holes, and we need to hold these people accountable.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
All flights, expand your station. Get set up. Get set up. Get set up.
So what are nickels? As you already know, on the 25th of May 2024, Stu Peters and Sean Hibbler are releasing a film titled Old World Order. It's basically another rendition of the Tartaria conspiracy theory, the one that both you and I once believed in and promoted, and have since changed our stance on it and tried to show others that it is not a credible conspiracy theory. You've been pretty busy in the lead up to the release of this movie, haven't you? You know, you've been doing some stuff on your main channel, and you said you've been digging into the cast of the film. And you've been doing a bit of preliminary due diligence before its release. Because that's the thing, isn't it? We all do change and advance and get better as the years go by. So it might be the case that some of these creators involved in the film have excellent research abilities. And we're going to be reviewing the entire thing after it's released right here on this channel. A fair, objective review of the film.
In terms of credibility, when it comes to the Old World cast, this presentation will speak for itself. So without further ado, let's start with Tartaria's fastest rising star, My Lunch Break.
I promise that I have something that will take the mainstream history that we have been force-fed since day one and rip it right in half. So here we go. The photo description states that in the summer of 1903, construction continues inside the entrance to the Palace of Machinery for the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, the 1904 World's Fair. The date of this photo is in 1903. The fair in St. Louis was in 1904. So this would all make perfect sense, except there's a massive flaw. A flaw so big that it's undeniable proof that this building was constructed 100 years before the 1903 date that we are told, and proof that there was a mud flood that ripped through this building at some point after 1803.
So in this video, My Lunch Break is going on about how he's discovered 1803 on the buildings of the 1904 St. Louis, Louisiana Purchase Exposition. And if you're willing to take your stoner glasses off for a minute, you can see clear as day that this is plaster. But that's fine, that's fine. This is a mud flood. I'm going with that. This is a mud flood, and there's something horrifically wrong, just as My Lunch Break brings up. But man, oh man, he thinks he's got a smoking gun with this 1803.
This, in my opinion, is the most incredible photo that I have ever seen to this point. A lie right in our faces, saying that this was being built in 1903, when we have multiple dates of 1803, time-stamped right on the building. After this World's Fair, they knocked these buildings down, not because they were pathetic, but because they held dates that do not fit in our mainstream timeline, and architecture that we cannot reproduce today. It's incredible. I've been talking to many people, engineers, construction workers, architects, and more about this photo. They are telling me that this is undeniable proof, and at this point, there isn't an excuse in the book that could save the mainstream history. It's time for everyone to wake up to the nonsense that we have all been force-fed to believe.
But here's the problem. Here on Wikipedia, we go into background. In 1904, as my lunch break pointed out, St. Louis hosted a World's Fair to celebrate the centennial of the 1803 Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase was the acquisition of the territory of Louisiana by the United States from the French First Republic in 1803. 1803. This is plaster, guys. This is real obvious as plaster. But again, I can't prove that, so we'll go ahead and jump off of that one. At this point, I'm convinced that this is AI making this shit up because I don't understand how you could be so ignorant. But let's say that my lunch break is accurate, and there is something so fishy about the World's Fairs, and this 1803 is the smoking gun. Why can't you just present this information? Why can't you let your audience know, well, hey, so here's what the mainstream's saying, is they're claiming that it's to celebrate the 1803 Louisiana Purchase. But here's why I believe it's a lie. I believe they made up the Louisiana Purchase just so we could have this date here, and there's an excuse for it. If you were to start the conversation like that, I'd be like, well, hey, there's nothing I can say to that. I wasn't there. You very well could be right, but you didn't start the conversation there. You acted like you found this smoking gun proof that this whole entire thing was a lie. But the Louisiana Purchase Exposition is celebrating the Louisiana Purchase from 1803.
And at this point, there isn't an excuse in the book that could save the mainstream history.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard. Everyone's laughing, by the way, but it's true because everybody's heard it too. Everyone heard it, right? They look at all, everyone's like, yeah, big piece of dog shit.
And you can even see later in my lunch breaks video, he's over here on Wikipedia looking stuff up. He knows what Wikipedia is. Or they. I'll say they because I don't know if he's even a person, if he's even a he. Might even be a transgender AI robot. I don't know. But you fail to cover the most basic, simple information. And then look at the comments. Well, I left a comment because I was like, this is a fucking joke. But all these people have no idea. Absolutely the best evidence that I've seen. It still amazes me that something as catastrophic as the Great Mud Flood is rarely discussed, or in my case, omitted during all my school years. No, what was omitted here is what the Louisiana Purchase was. Again, let's say it's made up. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say it's made up. It was omitted in my lunch breaks video. The Louisiana Purchase was in 1803. And if you were actually paying attention in your school years, we studied here in America, if you're from America, the Louisiana Purchase.
No way. Yes way.
Which should have been a bell going off in your head. Hey, well, the 1803, that relates to the Louisiana Purchase. I am blown away each passing day. Impossible timelines. Okay, here we go. Here's one. And there it is, signed in 1803. Do you think the date is just the commemorative date? Good question. But my lunch break will jump in and have these conversations with all the people that are ignorant enough to be preyed on by these grifters, because that's what's going on here. If you apply this scientific method, and I know the word science isn't popular, but if you apply this scientific method for how just research is being presented, you have an immediate red flag, because information is being left out to present a singular idea, which is why I've said in the past that a lot of these content creators and this research is no different than CNN. You are Twin flames with everything that you hate about people who believe everything they hear from the mainstream, because you people believe everything that this alleged person or AI bot puts on the goddamn internet. And this is just the first My Lunch Break video I've ever watched. There's 61 of these. 61. Imagine if I watched all of these and broke them down. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. I hope I don't come off like too much of a dick, but if you think I'm a dick, you should watch this guy's videos, because he comes off like an absolute dick, and on top of that, a jackass. I will say My Lunch Break is a perfect name for this channel because the research for these videos was clearly done within 30 minutes.
Do you fully trust the mainstream narrative? Are you on the fence? Well, if this is the first time finding this channel or hearing anything about the previous civilization, get ready to have your mind blown. We are given the St. Anne Shrine, located in Fall River, Massachusetts. We are given the mainstream history, where we are told the church was designed by Canadian architect Napoleon Barassa in the Romanesque Revival style, with construction beginning in 1891. Well, I have located a postcard from over 120 years ago of this building, and there is a major flaw on the back of this postcard that I don't think that anyone was ever meant to see, and we're about to see it right now. St. Anne's Church and Shrine, Fall River, Massachusetts, founded in 1869, which is 22 years before they tell us that construction was just starting on this project in 1891. Not only do they give us the date of 1869, they also say that it was founded. We have proven in episode 35 that the legal definition of the word founded is not constructed or built. You do not find your home, you build your home. It is constructed. In 1869, they found this building, and they are attempting to lie to us in the narrative, time and time again. This time we can see the lie, right on the table, for everybody to see. What a horrible mistake by the narrator. It is 100% undeniable proof that the story is lying to us, with a total mix-up, having this 1869 founded date on the back of a postcard that they thought nobody would ever see. This building was not built by people riding around on horses and wagons. This building was found. It was built by the previous civilization that had incredible knowledge and architecture skills and understood how to construct buildings that last forever. Welcome to episode 51 of My Lunch Break. I hope you're all having a great day, and if you're new, welcome.
What up, everybody? It's your old friend Wooden Nichols here, and I've done it again. I've been recommended a My Lunch Break video on my main page because I already watched one of them, and I could not help myself. I clicked on it, I watched the intro. Now, I didn't watch the rest of the video because I immediately took what was at the intro and started doing my own research. Now, I left this comment on My Lunch Break's channel, and I'm going to prove with this video that one of two things is happening. One is that My Lunch Break is a horrible researcher, or two, he is a lying grifter. Or option C, all of the above. So as you saw in the video, My Lunch Break only uses one source. Just one source to reach his conclusion that this whole entire thing is a lie. The narrative is lying to us. And that one source is Wikipedia. So just as before, I'm going to give My Lunch Break the benefit of the doubt. We did not build this cathedral. We cannot do it. I have no interest in debunking the construction behind it. What I am interested in is the scientific method and applying other sources and looking further into these topics with the help of research. So here we are at St. Anne Shrine of Fall River. This is their official website. And when you go to the Contact Info History tab, down at the bottom, we have history. And it just so happens that they have a book posted on their website that has 4 chapters. Chapter 1, Beginnings. Over 100 years ago, on July 4th, 1906, this imposing twin-towered, marble-clad Fall River landmark was consecrated. The story of its construction and of years that have followed sheds light not only on the contributions that its parishioners have brought to the city, but also provides insights on the history, sociology, and ambitions of those who settled Fall River, a city shaped by industriousness, opportunities, and faith. But first we have to go back, way back, to gain a broader perspective. Fall River, the early years. Imagine you could board a time machine and go back to the Fall River of, say, 1870s. What would you experience? So 1870s, 1869. We're starting to get close to some numbers here, right? Now, I'm not going to read all this, but I highly recommend My Lunch Break comes over here because it's a very educational read.
They also say that it was found or founded. We have proven in episode 35 that the legal definition of the word founded is not constructed or built. You do not find your home, you build your home.
According to Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition, from the Law Dictionary website, the founded definition and legal meaning is as follows: based upon, rising from, growing out of, or resting upon. So let's now try using that definition in this sentence. Based upon in 1869, arising from in 1869, growing out of in 1869, resting upon in 1869. So let's try another dictionary that's not Black's Law Dictionary. And for reference, the first edition of Black's Law Dictionary was published in 1891. This here is the American Dictionary of the English Language, Noah Webster, from 1828. Now again, benefit of the doubt, there was actually no 1828 because we were dealing with a hard reset mud flood. So this book actually is fake. The AI at some point whipped this 1828 book to you. You get the benefit of the doubt. But we are going to look up the definition of the word found in this 1828 dictionary. Let's start with the word find, because the past tense of the word is found. Literally, to come to meet, hence, to discover by the eye, to gain first sight or knowledge of something lost, to recover either by searching for it or by accident. So find is the word that My Lunch Break is talking about. Now, the English language is tricky. I'm not going to lie, even as an English language speaking person, this is a very difficult language because the past tense of the word find is found, but the word found also exists. Number one, to lay the basis of anything, to set or place, as on something solid for support. Number two, to begin and build, to lay the foundation and raise a superstructure, as to found a city. 3, to set or place, to establish, as on something solid or durable, as to found a government on principles of liberty. I am dumbfounded that it's reached the point you have to explain proper English to these people. Hey, there's that word found. Dumbfound. To strike dumb. That's certainly how I feel having stumbled across My Lunch Breaks channel. So here's the definition of the word founded. Now it's really important that we establish that the past tense of find is found. There can't be a past tense of found. It's not called the lost and founded. Founded, set, fixed, established, on a basis, begun and built. An example, we're using the definition in a sentence. Established in 1869 or begun in 1869. If a contestant asks during a spelling bee, can you use the word founded in a sentence? You could legally respond, St. Anne Church and Shrine was founded in 1869.
But the legal definition of the word founded is not constructed or built.
My Lunch Break's argument for the reason why the past tense of find is the same as the word found boils down to they're telling us because they have to tell us. That's an opinion, and you very well could be right. However, the Law Dictionary's definition of the word founded has no relevance to your opinion. It's moments like this that the words of the legendary George Carlin couldn't be any more pertinent.
The low IQs and the dumb behavior and the bad decisions. Right away, they start talking about education. That's the big answer to everything. Education. They said we need more money for education. We need more books, more teachers, more classrooms, more schools. We need more testing for the kids. You say to them, well, we've tried all of that, and the kids still can't pass the test. They say, don't you worry about that. We're going to lower the passing grades. And that's what they do in a lot of these schools now. They lower the passing grades so more kids can pass. More kids pass, the school looks good, everybody's happy, the IQ of the country slips another 2 or 3 points.
It'll say founded in 1898.
So now that we know that this building was founded, and the narrative is a complete lie.
Okay.
Let's take a look into this architect character, Mr. Napoleon Bourassa. And when we take a look at his biography, the character never actually leaves Canada. This should be alarming to anyone. They say his office is in Quebec, Canada. Born in Montreal, Canada. Visited Europe. Founded the Canadian Journal, doing more in Montreal, Canada. In 1880, finding the National Gallery of Canada. Him and his fellow artists are doing more in Quebec, Canada. Then dies in Canada. Where is the part that he throws his cowboy hat on, saddles up, heads down to Massachusetts on his horse and wagon, and works for the shipping company Donkeys Incorporated?
I'm going back to Massachusetts.
We'll jump over to the French Canadians arrive, because as my lunch break pointed out, the architect of St. Anne's Shrine is this Napoleon Bourassa character, if I'm pronouncing that right, and he's from Montreal, Quebec. In the early 1860s, there's that number, 1860s, 1869, very few French Canadians lived in Fall River. By 1868, about 100 French Canadian families called Fall River their home. Within 1 year, that number skyrocketed to 500 to 600 families, with about 3,000 people. Why this sudden increase? There were many reasons. Blah, 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 blah. Now, this paragraph is very important because people like My Lunch Break and all Tartarian researchers will only say horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy.
They will not address anything else. Just as My Lunch Break was saying in that video, the architect must have put on a cowboy hat and drove his horse and buggy from Canada to America. Or he wants to know when that story was because he can't find it on Wikipedia. With the opening of rail service between US and Canada in the 1850s and 60s, it took less than a day for French Canadians to reach the great New England mill towns. They weren't riding horse and buggies. They were riding trains. You guys really should look into the book, The Little Engine That Could. Rail technology, steam technology, and yes, horse and buggies is what built these magnificent structures. But again, I'm backtracking. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt we didn't build this cathedral. We're simply looking into how one does research. So scrolling past all these paragraphs, and it's filled with information worth reading, especially if you are presenting the idea that this church was not built when the narrative says it was. But we'll jump over here to chapter 2, Fall River and Immigration. So we'll jump down to this paragraph. Church officials in Boston were concerned too. Already, several non-Catholic evangelists, including French-speaking ones, were trying to make inroads with the disgruntled French Canadians. Something had to be done fast. The solution came in 1869. 1869. St. Anne Parish, St. Anne's Church and Shrine. We'll scroll past these first couple paragraphs, and what do we have here? The first church. So anyway, we'll just keep scrolling, and heck, let's just go to chapter 3 and see what they have to say. Chapter 3, Original Vision. And we'll just keep scrolling. I'm sure there's plenty of great information here, but what's this? The new church. The old wooden church on Hunter Street, that's 1869, though surprisingly spacious, had become inadequate for the waves of, well, I'm just going to say Quebecians, that continued to arrive. Father Saval knew that his congregation needed an even larger facility. he soon found an architect whose vision was equally grand, noted Canadian architect Napoleon Bourassa. So in My Lunch Break's video, he covers the biography of Napoleon Bourassa, but it's important that he's just using Wikipedia. And if you go back to my previous My Lunch Break video, he didn't want to look into Wikipedia for the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, but he definitely is down to use Wikipedia researching this architect. And here is more information upon more information about the architect. What a shock that it did not make it into My Lunch Break's video, because he gets all upset that how did this architect get from Canada down to New England? He literally makes a big deal that he can't understand why that's not listed in his Wikipedia. Not everything makes it onto the internet. So the fact that My Lunch Break just feels so confident and cocky that there's no record anywhere in Wikipedia of this guy traveling to Canada, well, then the narrative must be a lie. Anyway, back to the article. Like tons and tons and tons of information available on the official website of St. Anne Shrine of Fall River. So as stated, my hypothesis here is either one or two things are taking place. My Lunch Break doesn't know how to do research, or My Lunch Break is actually just lying and he's a grifter. And people are definitely going to come through and saying that I'm the one being a piece of shit. I'm the one tearing down this individual. But when you come out here cocky, arrogant, and just so obviously full of shit,
big piece of dog shit,
you should be thankful that someone like me is coming through and doing a peer review of you and matching your energy. That's all that's taking place here.
And the narrative is a complete lie. Let's take a look into this architect character, Mr. Napoleon Bourassa. And when we take a look at his biography, the character never actually leaves Canada, besides a little vacation to Europe. If he is truly constructing this palace in Massachusetts, this would have been mentioned, considering it's more impressive than anything we have ever constructed today. But the fact that they act like this is pathetic and not even worth mentioning, especially in a time period where presidents were being born in sheds.
First off, who said it's pathetic? Where are you getting that information from? What's pathetic is how you don't know how to research a topic, and yet you get 31,000 views in 2 days.
Where is the part that he throws his cowboy hat on, saddles up, heads down to Massachusetts,
And the lights all went out in Massachusetts,
on his horse and wagon, and works for the shipping company Donkeys Incorporated, and knocks out a massive palace? It's not in the narrative, because Napoleon Dynamite didn't do this. It was already found in 1869, exactly like we have shown. The narrative is fully lying to us, and we have fully documented this throughout the first 50 episodes.
So again, we're just going to apply the scientific method. We're not going to use Wikipedia as the only source to then just take that information and run, acting like you've got the torch of truth. We're going to be on the official website of the cathedral you're researching, only to find that there's a short book with 4 chapters, and you can scroll and scroll and scroll. And look, here's the guy's name. Here's the story that you can't find on Wikipedia. What a fudging shock. We can call this all a lie. I'm okay with that. You win, buddy. You win. It's all a lie. What I'm pointing out is how you can't research. And Hebler, this is one of your top guys for the Old World movie. Can't wait to see how that one turns out. And there it is. My Lunch Break has proven without a shadow of a doubt that the narrative is lying to us, because he used Wikipedia and a postcard and didn't apply any other sources into his hypothesis. Here we are back at chapter 1 of this book on St. Anne's official website. As Fall River grew and the Industrial Revolution gained momentum, a considerable need for new workers arose. By coincidence, and maybe this wasn't a coincidence, by the way, maybe this is where the real conspiracy lies, a terrible crop failure in Ireland occurred in the 1840s, leading to a potato famine. The resulting economic crisis left most Irish people in dire straits. Maybe this was a controlled crisis to get immigrants to come to America to start building it. the second wave of the Industrial Revolution had begun. Railroads, steamships, better manufacturing equipment, and new technology, electricity, gave it momentum. None of that will ever fit into the Tartaria hypothesis. It's all about you need to believe it was only horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy.
And if you're ignorant enough to believe that, Tartaria works. As a hypothesis, it works. You had a boom in immigration. Technology was developing. You can go online and watch modern day artists using the same materials with absolutely no power tools, creating ornaments and beautiful ornaments. None of this shit was impossible back then. And I even left a comment here daring Hibbler, however he's pronounced, corner one of these guys with your film crew. Corner them. And get them to admit that they can't do this. That they can't with stone create ornaments. Because this is what's blowing your mind. This is what makes that impossible, is the ornamentation in your minds. Engineering-wise, you could have cranes that could pull this off. You had rail technology. We're talking about 1906. You had steam technology. In the narrative, it's possible to have done this based off the technology. But what you guys have to do is ignore the fact that that technology existed in favor of horse and buggy to make this work.
Horse and buggy.
And you might be wondering, well, why is Woody Nichols going after Hibbler? Like, what did he do? He comes over to one of Ewar's old videos, and he leaves this bullshit comment, and he wants to end it promoting his movie coming in 2024. Stay tuned, Ewar. You just may change your mind, ... again. So if we do the math on the fundraiser for this old world film project, after 130 days running, you are only at 43% of your goal. From just my lunch break alone, his most popular videos, he's got 240,000 views. All these people need to do is donate $1 to this cause. And that's just my lunch break alone. Any of these other content creators can have one of their people donate $1. But where's the money at? I'm not accusing my lunch break of buying views, but I bet someone is buying views for they. These are inflated numbers. Now, I don't know what the previous fundraisers for Hibbler's productions are, but this is not looking like a good number. It is not looking like it has support from the community, or the community is actually smaller than YouTube is making it out to be. Don't worry, Hibbler. Ewar and I will be staying tuned to your mind-blowing old world order film, because it's important to resist the new world order, but be sure to bow down to the old world order, because my lunch break is on the case.
What a horrible mistake by the narrator.
I told you about this yesterday, but rarely do I ever binge on anybody's channel on YouTube. But recently, yesterday, there's this guy. He's a Tartaria guy. He calls himself My Lunch Break. Go to YouTube and follow My Lunch Break. Go through all his videos. This guy's like
Put that link in the description below so people could just click it.
I will. He does Tartaria so well, real fast. He's lightning. He's on fire. My Lunch Break, dude, just
fire.
Rap, dude. I can't stop watching his shit.
It's high science, man. It's art form.
And at first, I was only focused on like the West Coast of the United States structures, because we know in the 1800s, the West Coast was cowboys and Indians. So their stories, like when they were built, they're all bullshit.
Yeah, he breaks them all down. I saw the video you sent me. It's pretty amazing.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
Welcome. I've been here a few times, and I'm back now. We just flew out to California to show you all buildings on the west coast of North America that definitely don't belong in our mainstream timeline. Are you ready to have your mind blown today? Well, here we go. I never thought that anything was off. Never thought that anything here in Huntington Beach, California was from the previous civilization. I thought it was just a place that people just set up in the mid-1900s and had fun surfing and a great beach. And then all of a sudden, I clicked on the massive pier and searched its history and looked into this town's beginnings. And what I found was definitely eye-opening, to say the least.
Hi, everybody!
Hi, we're the Nickels. Now you got Eddie Bravo and Sam Tripoli openly pushing this low IQ nonsense, so let's jump back into it. And just as my previous two My Lunch Break videos, we're going to give My Lunch Break the benefit of the doubt. All history is a lie, and your ancestors were incapable of building something as simple as not only a wooden pier, but a concrete pier as well.
The pier was built in 1902, before Huntington Beach even became a town in 1909. So 7 years before it was a town, they needed this massive pier? Okay. So let's go even deeper. The population of Huntington Beach in 1910, 8 years after the pier was created, was only 815 people. So let's do the math here. 1920, 10 years later, they doubled their population. So 8 years before 1910, how many people were even in Huntington Beach, California? Like 400 people? What are they doing constructing a massive pier that extends 1,000 feet into the Pacific Ocean?
Oh, I don't know, maybe fishing? You have to eat in order to survive, and there's no law that says a town has to be incorporated in order for residents to build a pier, which helps secure food for their prosperity.
Any more brain busters?
It seems odd, especially when the exact same year, pretty much, that the town began, in 1910, when they finally started documenting things about this town.
So this is actually pretty laughably comical right here. We've got two arrows. One is pointing to the first line of the sentence there, and then the other one is pointing to the third line of information. But we do need a third arrow, and that third arrow is going to point right to the second line of this information. So let's go ahead now and just read the line that was worth skipping. The Huntington Beach Company, Standard Oil, built a wooden pier at the terminus of Main Street in 1904. So for those of you who might not be aware, oil is a pretty big deal. There's even this term petrodollars, also known as petrocurrency. So oil makes money, and people like money.
There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet.
This is a photo of Huntington Beach from 1920. So you don't really need to worry about what the population of the town was, because it wasn't the town building the pier, it was an oil company. Now there is a chance that this photo is fake. I know there's that whole crowd, and benefit of the doubt, the photo is fake. The oil company wasn't here. There are definitely not other photos that show this massive oil field in Huntington Beach, California. And if there are, they're going to come from the Orange County archives, which we shouldn't trust them. We should only trust opinions from YouTubers who are using Wikipedia. There are definitely not photos from the 1950s of Huntington Beach that show this exact same thing. This is also fake. So if you spoke with anyone who has a family heritage in this area and perhaps their parents were born here before the 1950s, you cannot trust their opinion if they tell you that oil fields were here. They're definitely lying to you. But all sarcasm aside, there is a lot of evidence that there was oil produced in Huntington Beach, California, and as we know, oil makes money. But here's the real whoopsies. My Lunch Break claims that the 1902 pier extended 1,000 feet into the Pacific Ocean, but is pointed out from reading that second line, the Wikipedia entry is referring to the second pier built in 1904, not the original built in 1902. So either this is evidence of a horrible researcher, or this channel actually feels this confident lying to the audience. In this photo from 1920, when we zoom in, you can see a wooden pier that roughly appears to be 1,000 feet. If I were a betting man, I'd say this is the oil company's wooden pier.
We get the destruction story when it was damaged in 1910 by a severe storm that caused a large portion of the pier to plunge into the Pacific Ocean. After everything that we have seen and everything that we know, this seems very off and extremely sketchy.
Let's go ahead and see if we can found it a photo of the original pier. Again, this is about 10-20 minutes of research. Original wooden pier, 1904. Again, benefit of the doubt, all these photographs could be faked, and we're going with only My Lunch Break's opinion as fact. Everything else is fiction. And this is how the pier looks today, and this is concrete, not wood. But with that said, there is visibly a noticeable difference in this photo, because as we'll hear more on later, the 1914 concrete pier later gets an extension, which was constructed with wood. And just an interesting tidbit that I found out within that 20 to 30 minutes of research, this restaurant is not the original restaurant. There was an even earlier restaurant out there, a Tartarian style architecture restaurant. You guys ready to see it? Here it is, a Tartarian style restaurant that, believe it or not, got damaged by a storm.
With some random storm story. It's incredible.
Stop it. Get some help.
But in 1983, the Tartarian restaurant that used to be there got hit by a storm. Now in 1939, the same pier was also hit by a storm, and it too damaged this pier. And this photo is courtesy of Huntington Beach Historic Resources Board. Now, we can't trust those people. We can trust Wikipedia, but we cannot trust any other piece of information because they're definitely lying to us. So then in January 1988, it happened again. A violent storm rose up. And here's proof of the interior Tartarian architecture, the restaurant that was at the end of the pier from the old world that got destroyed. So this is what the ancient advanced world, these were the chairs that they would sit in to eat Tartarian cuisine, which in this case was a pizzeria. And here's a fake photo from the 1980s of what a wave looks like hitting a pier. But again, storms don't just cause damage like this. This is how they lie to us. They say it's either a fire, they say it's a storm. Don't believe them. This is all fake. I'm at benefit of the doubt, I'm going to give it to you. So now that I just proved without a shadow of a doubt that the storms of the late 1930s and 1980s were clearly fake and a lie, we can be absolutely sure that in 1910 this storm didn't happen, because storms don't happen. It's impossible. Just like this architecture, it's impossible for waves to wipe out a wooden pier, because this has been here forever. This is the original Tartarian pizzeria. They're lying to you. That storm in the 1980s didn't happen because waves cannot knock stuff down.
It seems odd, especially when the exact same year, pretty much, that the town began in 1910, when they finally started documenting things about this town.
So I just want to stop there and repeat that quote, when they finally started documenting things about that town. I already know My Lunch Break will not do a response, but what do you mean by they started doing documentations in 1910? Where did you get that information from that the documentation starts in 1910? Well, I think where you got it from is Wikipedia, because it says history, and then you're pointing at a date that says 1910.
So in 1914, 4 years after this destruction, they build a brand new one, supposedly. And it sets a record for the longest and highest concrete pleasure pier in the USA. In my opinion, this is the original pier.
Are you delusional? Do you suffer from a mental illness? Do you think you do?
And really makes you think, what else is in our everyday life that is constructed by the previous civilization and we just never realized it? Definitely something off. And that's when we know that we need to dig deeper.
I agree with my lunch break. Let's dig deeper past Wikipedia.
Even before there was a Huntington Beach, the pier was the hub of a waterfront activity, beginning in 1903 when a wooden structure was extended some 1,000 feet to sea. Residents of the new resort community were joined by visitors from surrounding areas in the novelty of being able to stroll so far into the ocean on a pleasure pier. Visiting the pier became easier on July 4th, 1904, when the first of the red cars of Henry Huntington Pacific Electric Railway rolled into the station of the tiny seaside community now called Huntington Beach in honor of the railroad magnate. But the pier history has not always been one of tranquility. In 1912, a severe storm sent huge surf roaring through the wooden pilings, causing heavy damage as the wooden structure was nearly washed away. Voters approved the idea, and a new 1,350-foot concrete replacement pier was built in June 1914. It had the distinction of being the longest, highest, and the only solid pleasure pier in the United States. The city's population went from 1,500 to over 7,000 in less than 1 year. All was hustle and bustle in Huntington Beach as oil derricks sprang up everywhere. Ocean Avenue, now known as Pacific Coast Highway, was built in 1925 and extended to nearby cities. All this attention and activity on the pier led to the extension of some 500 feet in the early 1930s to improve fishing and to provide a boat landing. The extension, built of wooden pilings, was 4 feet lower than the older section and was known to sway a great deal when the surf was up or during storms. The history of the Huntington Beach Municipal Pier has been one of the storms which have tested its ability to stand against the ocean, and in the late 1930s, the storm came again, this time with the force of a hurricane, and during a 20-hour period in 1939, the end 250 feet of the pier collapsed. But the people of Huntington Beach repaired their piers again and again as the storms continued to take their toll.
My conclusion with this presentation is the same as the previous two My Lunch Break videos, which is there is no actual research taking place. So anyway, I am totally looking forward to the release of Stu Peters' Old World Order. And here's my theory, because you got Eddie Bravo pushing My Lunch Break on Joe Rogan, and you really can't make this up, but the runtime of the clip that My Lunch Break is sharing is 33 seconds in length. It's Stu Peters involved in this thing now. The whole point of Tartaria is to make people who question reality, that question the system, look fucking stupid.
But like, but if you are to try to make in 60 minutes, and you're going to take like, you know, a few minutes of Longo and Leadkit and Gibson. I mean, these are guys that are known to be able to really just be able to talk. So to be able to get
Matthew Smith at the bottom, he is a 25-year architect, man. And in my opinion, he's a whistleblower. And that's funny to people, I'm sure. But man, he's been an architect for so long that he knows what's going on, in my opinion, and he said a lot of stuff in this film. And
as you've heard from Sean Hebler himself, Matthew Smith, a 25-year veteran in architecture, has been described as a whistleblower. Matthew Smith, founder and principal of Dream Design Build, has been designing custom homes since 2005. With an extensive background in residential architecture and construction, he is an industry leader in roundhouse design. Visit Smiling Woods Yurts for prefabricated wooden yurt kit options. All of our complete round home kits include the shell components, roof, walls, siding, for a round structure, built with the same principles as traditional stick-built homes. From first glance, these prefabricated wooden yurt kits look like the type of structures found on a hippie commune.
Right now, we're proving we don't need corporations. We don't need money. This can become a commune where everyone just helps each other. Yeah, we'll have one guy who makes bread, and one guy who he looks out for other people's safety.
You mean like a baker and a cop?
No, can't you imagine a place where people live together and provide services for each other in exchange for their services?
Yeah, it's called a town.
You kids just haven't been to college yet.
But make no mistake, Wooden Nickels has zero experience in the field of construction. Matthew's YouTube page, Marvelous Old World, focuses on exploring the lost architecture of the Old World in America. In this presentation, Wooden Nickels will be reviewing the first 5 minutes of Old World Seattle edited version.
When I have these conversations with people, what's often, the rejoinder that's often put on the table as well, they knew how to build things back then. And yes, they did know how to build things back then. Yeah, there was master craftsmen that were coming from Europe as immigrants. I get that. But you got to have enough of them, and you got to have enough resources to work with, and you got to have enough time. This is in 1882. Why so big?
Here Matthew asks, why so big? Referring to a 3-story building in 1882. Compared to a Smiling Woods yurt house, yes, this structure is pretty big. As Matthew previously points out, the population of Seattle in 1880 is recorded at 3,500. In 1890, the population spikes to 42,837. According to Mainstream Lies, people were moving from east to west. So let's look further east and see if we can spot a correlation in regards to population growth. The population of Kansas City, Missouri in 1880 is 55,785. Indianapolis's 1880 population at 75,056. Columbus, Ohio is at 51,647 and also sees a spike in 1890, with a population of 88,150. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at 156,381 in 1881, and Boston at 362,839. Welcome to Wonderopolis, a place where natural curiosity and imagination lead to exploration and discovery in learners of all ages. Wonder of the day number 74, what is city planning? Have you ever wondered, what is city planning? What factors should be considered when planning a city? Why do homes tend to be clustered in one area while businesses are in another? There is evidence of urban planning and design communities dating back to Mesopotamia and Egyptian civilizations in the 3rd millennium BCE. The idea of a planned out urban area evolved as different civilizations adopted it. Let's pretend for a moment our ancestors here in Western society actually built stuff, a crazy concept that was wildly accepted throughout history until 2020.
While dismissing our own capabilities and intellectual, independent, critical thinking and the accomplishments of our own ancestors and everyone else who came before us.
The Wonderopolis Children's website asks us to pretend we ourselves are a city planner and exercise our critical thinking skills. Rather than using the example the website provides, let's focus on Matthew's inquiry of why so big?
Why so big? I just have to ask this question again and again.
Applying the earlier information pertaining to the growing Eastern American cities of that time period, one could rationally conclude Seattle's city planners knew the population was coming. But how did you reach that conclusion, Wooden Nickels? Because they were planning a city, and the trajectory of the cities to the east provided evidence of consistent growth.
How are these being heated? It gets cold here.
Here, Matthew demonstrates the oldest trick in the Tartarian playbook, by asking questions without presenting the answer to create mystery. Fireplaces and furnaces, that's how buildings were heated in the 1880s. So to recap, Sean Hibbler has described Matthew as an architect whistleblower who does not know how buildings were heated in the 19th century, while a simple online search quickly yields an answer.
I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I think a lot of these points bear repeating. This is ornate craftsmanship, broken arches. I mean, columns, capitals, bases, everywhere. The detail on this building is exquisite. The amount of time it would have taken to do this, the amount of resources that it would have taken to do this, the amount of labor power, and the architecture is just magnificent.
But then when you go on their website, it says it was constructed in a year.
The Yesler-Leary building had a cast iron facade, a material that allowed the mass production of highly ornamented, stamped parts, but one that had a low melting point, making it vulnerable to fires. As Matthew states, the Yesler-Leary building would be lost to the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. In the 1840s, the cheapness and malleability of cast iron led James Bogardus of New York City to develop the idea of buildings using cast iron for complete decorative facades, which were far cheaper than traditional carved stone, but could be painted to give the appearance of stone. Applying critical thinking to Matthew the whistleblowing architect, as a 25-year veteran in architecture, cast iron facading should be a part of one's vocabulary, yet is absent from the conversation in Matthew Smith's photo review of the Yesler-Leary building. Cast iron architecture was a popular type of building design, used throughout the world in the mid-1800s. Its popularity was due in part to its efficiency and cost-effectiveness. A regal exterior facade could be mass-produced inexpensively with cast iron. Entire structures could be prefabricated and shipped around the world as portable iron houses. Prefabricated, where have we heard this term before? Ah yes, from Matthew Smith's website where he sells prefabricated round yurt houses.
Back in the early 18th century, Abraham Darby, an Englishman, developed an iron that could be melted and poured into reusable molds. Somewhere along the line, someone decided if this material could be poured into molds, all kinds of things could be done with it. In fact, these relatively inexpensive casts could be shipped and used on buildings far quicker and cheaper than carving stone, which is what they had done before. And since those molds were reusable, you could replicate the same piece many, many times over. Eventually, catalogs of these components were available from which a designer or builder could order all the parts necessary for an entire building exterior. All these factors came together to make cast iron building facades not only feasible, but advantageous and economical as well. Various bits and pieces of buildings done with cast iron, these window crowns, the cornices, but most commonly, if you've been in downtown situations, you've seen these facade components used very effectively. And then some buildings had very ornate facades that went all the way up. The entire facade was often done with the cast iron. Precast concrete enjoyed a significant reign as king of the preformed building component.
But I know you critical thinking online gumshoes will ask, how are these prefabricated cast iron facades shipped by horse and buggy?
Horse and buggy.
You'll want to start by researching the Union Pacific Railroad Acts of 1862. Seattle would see its first railway system begin construction in 1873, while Portland, Oregon would have an operational railway by 1869. Seattle's first railway, known as the Walla Walla Railroad, would connect to the already existing East Side Company's Portland, Oregon Railroad. For beginners to this subject, you'll want to start with lighter reading material. This channel highly recommends the critically acclaimed novel The Little Engine That Could. Ornate facades could be imitated from historic buildings and then hung on the steel-framed tall buildings, the new architecture being built in the late 19th century.
So I was challenged by somebody who left a comment in my last video on Seattle Underground, and she took issue with the fact that I used the term old world to qualify architecture in Seattle, some architecture. She said, basically, my terminology is twisted, and don't you know the old world is in the east and the new world is in the west? Well, here's my response. What else do I call this? This is an old world building, if I've ever seen one. And what is this top made out of? Is this roof here? Is this metal? It sure looks like it. And here it shows up in 1882, according to the official record.
Here's where the lady is right, and the terminology is being twisted by Matthew and his fellow Tartarian researchers, whom now identify as Old World researchers, whose pronouns are they, them, fifth columnist. Byzantine architecture is also being described as an Old World architecture. Romanesque is described as Old World architecture. Gothic is described as Old World architecture. Pyramids are described as Old World architecture. These four styles of architecture are completely different, and when using the power of observation, belong to different regions and different time periods. But the they, them, fifth columnists are twisting all styles of architecture into one, which was previously described as Tartarian architecture.
Spoon-fed this dumbed-down, cartoonish, simplified version of history.
To be a hypocrite doesn't mean that you make mistakes and you don't always live up to what you believe. That's not hypocrisy, that's called humanity. Let's understand what the word means. When it was used in its original context, it meant an actor. It was the word used to describe an actor. In fact, in Greek culture, it had no negative connotation whatsoever. You would just say, well, he's a hypocrite. Or another way to say, an actor. Many times we admire them. We think they have a lot to tell us. Without their makeup and their costume and their cleverly written lines, we realize these people are not the characters they play. They're actors. Maybe they're very good at it, but they're pretending to be something they are not. That is what a hypocrite is, and this is what we are not to be.
Another common tactic from the Old World researchers' playbook is to state, we find the same type of architecture all around the world without providing any proper context. For example, the LiDAR drones uncovering vast swatches of the Mayan Empire in Central America have yet to reveal a star fort. As Matthew highlights Seattle from the late 19th century, neither Romanesque, Gothic, or any other style of early world architecture is featured. The style of architecture found across the world, which the they, them, fifth columnists are referring to, is known as neoclassical, a revival of classical architecture during the 18th and early 19th century.
The very first version of precast building components was right there at hand, and the timing was perfect for such a material to hit the market. Victorian and neoclassical buildings were in vogue, and more buildings were being constructed with steel skeletons onto which it was a simple matter to attach the facade components.
While architect Matthew Smith sees an old world building, Woodin Nichols is witnessing an architect that has been duped by architecture.
Throughout the late 18 and early 1900s, almost every major American city was burnt to the ground. And many of these fires, like the Chicago fire of 1871, have just never been solved. Their cause is just unknown to this very day, or at least that's what the history books say.
Here, Stu Peters shows an image from the Great Chicago Fire aftermath. According to a 50-year architect, architectural ironworks would explain why this galvanized iron facade component is still standing. But since Stu Peters is on a crusade to preserve Western history, let's fact-check the 50-year architect, who may or may not be a Zionist Jew trying to hide the history of giants from us. And holy crap, you can spend days, if not weeks, viewing uploaded catalogs of architectural ironworks via the Internet Archive. Catalogs range from the 1870s with the Hain brothers in Reading, Pennsylvania, through the early 20th century with W.H. Mullins Co. of Salem, Ohio. These catalogs feature galvanized ironworks from cornices, window and door caps, entire storefront facades, patent cresting blocks, terminals, sign letters, finial and weather vanes which have been reclassified as Antiquitech, roofing, ceilings, ornamented columns, statues, the list goes on. And we even get pricing for the items. How did our ancestors in America construct these detailed and marvelous buildings so quick? With prefabricated architectural ironworks. No master masons required. Kinda like how you don't need to be a carpenter to put IKEA furniture together. Though I'm sure my lunch break would struggle to follow simple directions, since he's proven to be absolutely useless. Maybe if lunch break had this guy as a father growing up, he wouldn't be embarrassing himself all the time on the internet.
Gotta measure this. I said fucking hold it! Hey!
Of course, you can always ignore this information and go full retard like Hebler and Stu Peters.
You was farting in bathtubs and laughing your ass off. Yeah.
There's nothing more patriotic than erasing your own history in favor of fairy tales. Did I say patriotic? I meant to say Marxist.
You are an American treasure.
As Hebler states, Dr. Narco Longo, otherwise known as Old World Florida, will be reviewing his film prior to Old World Order's release to the public. I hope the good doctor has plenty of radiated bong water and Adderall handy, because he'll have quite a lot of fact-checking ahead of him.
This Saturday, May 25th, I can't believe all of this time is now finally coming to its conclusion where we unveil this actual truth about our history.
Are you sure about that?